The first album that I bought, I'm pretty sure the most memorable one is Writings on the Wall. I probably did own other albums before them, but I remember getting it at Target and listening to it to an insane degree. Like, I've never listened to any song more than I've listened to Say My Name.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like
also great
on repeat.
video.
Yeah,
amazing
incredible.
Video.
Welcome to This Broken Mixtape, the podcast that rewinds and presses play on the soundtrack to your life. I'm Jeff Wu.
And I'm Justin Lee.
Brooklyn indie pop duo Wet seamlessly blends synth pop, folk, soft rock, and 90s R&B sounds into a melancholic gumbo. Their sophomore record, Still Run, builds on their emotional pop sound with 10 songs that embody an overwhelming sense of loss. We sat down with lead singer Kelly Zutrau to talk about how their co-founding member's departure impacted the band's dynamic, how she continues to deal with intense performance anxiety, and how she witnessed a breakup at a rollerskating rink soundtrack to Unbreak My Heart.
So our special guest this week is Kelly Zutrau, one half of Brooklyn indie pop duo Wet. Thank you for being on the show, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
So I think it's been like almost a year since you last played here, right? I was at the...
Just about a year ago.
Right, yeah, I was at that show, the Velvet Underground. You're playing there again tonight.
Yep.
Very exciting, Kilo Kush and...
Hanavu,
who's amazing. I can't wait to see her. So I'm wondering, like, between the first and second record, you guys went from a trio to a duo. I'm wondering how that whole line of change impacted the writing, recording, and performing dynamic of the band, and what sort of adjustments you guys had to make.
Yeah, I think it did. Joe's always been sort of like the producer of the group. He does a lot of the programming and the work in the computer, and he does some music playing. Like, he's credited as a multi-instrumentalist, but I would say he kind of dabbles in all instruments, but isn't an expert at any of them. And Marty was more of like the instrumentalist in the group. So I think the main way that it changed the recording process was we had a bunch of session players in for this next album, which was a really fun, interesting experience. Kind of, we hadn't done that for the first one. And then writing wise, it didn't change very much. I kind of always have written the songs on auto harp and then handed them over to Joe, who then kind of starts to produce them out and pass them back to me. That's generally how it's always been. There's a few exceptions, but that stayed pretty true for the second album as well.
Okay. And the name of the new record's called Still Run. Where does that name come from?
So the last song that we added to the album ended up being the title track, Still Run, and it's the full line is, "It's the hardest thing that I've ever done to love somebody and still run." When I wrote that song, it was towards the end of the process, and for me it felt like the song summed up a lot of the emotional state that I'd been in while writing the album and while we were making it. It was a transition album. There were a lot of changes and a lot of loss took place during that time, and it was sort of like making sense of it and kind of figuring out, you know, what an album would sound like through that. So I felt like that song was just an accurate documentation of that time.
When you say lost, do you mean like lost relationships, or actually that you lost loved ones around you?
A bit of both. Like, I won't get into details, but it was sort of like on a lot of different levels. I felt like I was just going through a time where I couldn't hold anything together in my life, and a lot of changes took place at once, sort of big changes. So, yeah. And I think Joe would, to an extent, say the same thing.
Okay. And you guys brought in a lot of talented producers this time around. Andrew Sarlo, John Hill, and Rostam, to name a few.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to sort of maintain a singular vision and when you're working with all these great producers, or was it, was that easy? Like, were they able to sort of execute what you were looking for?
I think now, looking back, now that I'm outside of the process, when I look at the two albums and the EP, I think that this newest album, in some ways, it's evident that we worked with a bunch of different people. There's different moments that feel pretty different from each other compared to the first album, which is more cohesive because we did it all ourselves. And also we had just been working towards that first album for so long. You know, it is tricky. I think it's harder. It can be harder to make a second album, especially with just the stuff we were going through. It was truly like an exploratory phase for me, especially, where I really just wanted to try things and work with different people and see what would happen and be a little less precious than I had been in the past, or than we had been in the past. It was a really interesting experience. I can't say that it turned out a better result or worse. I don't think I'm the best judge of that. But I will say that after doing that, I felt a big pull to kind of go back to a smaller team, just because it can be a logistical nightmare and it's expensive and credits. It's just like every person you bring into the process adds another layer of like emotion and conversations and money, and it's awesome, and it's also exhausting. It's both those things.
And speaking of Rostam, is it true that you used to live with them and you guys used to do like impromptu recording sessions?
Yeah, so there was a period where I left New York and went and lived with Rostam, and he was really sweet to me and let me live in his back house. And we were working together at the time, like writing stuff, and he was producing some songs I had written. And yeah, we were just like having fun and working on music a lot together. Sometimes at weird hours, out of the blue, we would work on something, and that was great.
Any plans on recording with him in the future?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely do more together, for sure. Yeah.
You've been pretty vocal about your anxiety issues on stage, having stage fright and whatnot. But watching you like perform, I don't feel like the fans get any of that. You seem very natural on stage, and I imagine it kind of gets a little bit better with each show. How are you in that right now?
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I've definitely gotten better at dealing with it over the years, and just staying focused on the task at hand. It's just not always the most enjoyable thing. Like, I can get through it, but I guess the point is that it's so much nicer when I can just get out of my head and be present in the performance, which is rare, but it does happen for moments throughout the show. And yeah, we had a couple rough shows at the beginning of this tour. Rough by my standards. They were fine. They went as planned, but I just felt really, really nervous. And then I started, like, the fourth show, I started kind of talking through it on stage a little bit, like letting the audience into my experience. And it kind of changed things. And the shows since then have felt really comfortable and good. So I think sometimes for me, just being honest and kind of like breaking that wall and like admitting that it's not going to be perfect, and that's not even the goal. The goal is to have sort of a real intimate interaction, and so then I'm allowed to mess up and I'm allowed to talk about what I'm thinking, and that makes it better. For sure.
And I think that a lot of people suffer from anxiety, myself included, to varying degrees. But I mean, whenever you have a performer that kind of, is just honest and direct about it, I think that's something that the attendees actually appreciate.
That's good. Great. Yeah.
Sure. So let's rewind here and let's go back to the 90s in the Zutrau household. What kind of stuff would your parents be playing around the house?
So I grew up mostly with my mom. She was on and off a single mom, raising me and my three younger sisters for a lot of my childhood. There were she had partners, but for the most part, it was the five of us together. And my mom doesn't have like a wide range of taste, but I really she has a few excellent choices, like George Michael. I was just talking about this the other day in an interview. That song Faith was such a big one growing up, just on repeat. My mom listens to music like will listen to a song over and over and over again. And little kids don't mind that. So we just thought that was normal. And what else? Like Whitney Houston was really big. The Bodyguard soundtrack was one of the CDs that was just in her car for years. Madonna, Mariah Carey. That's mostly it. And then like we would listen to the radio sometimes, and it was always on like soft rock channels. So you can hear that in, I think, what I gravitate towards, slow, kind of soft, like melancholy music generally. I think me and Joe both tend towards bland is kind of a mean way of putting it, but like plain production sometimes that I hear on soft rock radio. And we both grew up listening to Magic 106.7 in Boston, which had like, you know, a lot of like soft rock and soft R&B. And I think that's like, it's really clear in the music we're making now.
I know that 90s R&B was kind of a big part of your sort of later years. And is it true that you had like a singing group in middle school and you guys would do covers of Destiny's Child and SWV?
Yes. So yeah, I went to a public school in Mission Hill in Boston, and that's just what everyone was listening to at the time. And our singing group did like Usher songs and SWV and Destiny's Child, and we were not very good. There was like no money at the school, but it was like a very it was like when I watch videos now, it's very sweet watching it. And that's like where I learned to sing, was singing those songs with my friends there.
And you would just perform at school talent shows and that sort of thing?
Yeah, totally.
Do you guys have a name for the group, or?
I think we did. I think it was just Mission Hill School Singing Group, something really plain. We didn't have like an adult involved, so it was very basic. Like we were, I was actually telling Rossum about it. He was like, could you sing harmonies? And I was like, no, we were not singing harmonies. We were all just singing in unison, fighting over the good solos, you know? But a lot of like Destiny's Child and SWV. And
would you choreograph these performances as well, or?
Again, like to call it choreography would be generous, but there was like a step and a sway and like a little bit of arm movement. I need to get the videos because I think they would be so amazing for people to see. But yeah, that was what people were listening to at my school.
And do you remember the first album that you bought or downloaded?
The first album that I bought, I'm pretty sure the most memorable one is Writings on the Wall. I probably did own other albums before them, but I remember getting it at Target and listening to it to an insane degree. Like I've never listened to any song more than I've listened to Say My Name.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like
also great
on repeat.
video.
Yeah,
amazing video.
Incredible.
Yeah. But I feel like the underrated track, and it was a single, but I just feel like it wasn't as big as the other ones, was Bugaboo. I thought Bugaboo was a great song.
Yeah, it was great. Totally. And Bills and a lot of the like ones later on in the album too. Yeah. I know that's not a unique answer at all. I think there's just like millions of girls from that time that listen to that music obsessively, but it definitely, I think something about how like well produced and shiny and smooth and just like all those thick harmonies, like I just remember thinking it was godly.
And you could sort of hear a little bit of that 90s R&B influence in Wet, especially within the melodies. I know that you were on a new Toro y Moi song, Monte Carlo, and I feel like it's kind of the closest thing you've ever done to like a hip-hop song. Not that it is like an actual hip-hop song. Any sort of plans of doing features on hip hop songs, or even like more straightforward R&B?
Totally open to it. No plans at the moment, but I loved working with Chaz, and I it's the song that he made is incredible. I like basically went in and he had his parts written out and this track, and I just sort of started singing a bunch of ideas down, and he was like, okay, I think we're good. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, it's amazing. I think I've got it. And I was like, okay. And then I didn't hear it until it was done. And then he sent it to me and I loved it. And I definitely want to work more with him. I think he's one of the best producers and artists. He's just so interesting and really, like, not easy to categorize in a really good way. Like, he's pushing boundaries of music that I think are good to push. I don't think it's bland in any way.
For sure. Every project that he's put out has been completely different.
Yeah.
I think another producer, and he's from here, so I'm a little biased, but I think somebody that you would work really well with, and I'm going to put this out there because he is going to be on the show eventually, Ryan Hemsworth. I don't know if you're familiar with his.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could definitely see you being on like a Hemsworth
We
track.
have worked together.
You
I
have?
think I am on a song of his.
Really?
This was a long time ago,
Okay.
but I could dig it up. Yeah.
Okay.
We've worked together.
Awesome.
And we've talked about working together more.
Yeah.
I think that could be cool.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
One of your videos, the video for You're the Best, shot at a roller skating rink.
Yeah.
There's something really like innocent and nostalgic about it. And it reminded me when I was 9 years old, we went to a roller skating rink and I lived in Calgary at the time. And I mean, going back to George Michael's Faith, I only really knew 2 songs at the time by name that I loved. And one of them was Faith and the other
Really?
one's George Harrison's cover of I've Got My Mind Set on You.
Crazy.
And those are the 2 songs that I requested. But just watching that video just reminded me of that. Were you like really into roller skating when you were a kid?
No.
No?
Not particularly, but I have a few really distinct memories of it. Like one time when I was like 7 or 8, I was really young and I was visiting some family that I didn't know very well. And I was with my dad, my real dad, who I would see my dad occasionally, but I didn't usually stay like overnight. So we were on this trip together and it was definitely like, looking back, I think I was like nervous, or I don't know, it was just like an unusual time. And this really weird, I won't get into details, but a very weird interaction with family members of mine took place at this skating rink that involved like a blind date and like an intense rejection. And I was just watching it as a little kid. Like, I had seen all the build up throughout the day, and we kind of all went and watched this whole thing take place and kind of watched it go very wrong. And it was so sad. It was like, it's such a sad formative memory. And what was playing in the background was Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart.
Wow.
And that song now makes me so deeply sad. But it was just this very weird situation. Anyways, so I have all these, and then there's a couple other things. Like, I remember when I was a little older going to like a birthday party, and I was going out with a boy at the time, which meant like we'd looked at each other once, like held hands, and he like had started going out with my best friend at the roller, some drama, some little drama that I remember that too. And so I associate roller rinks with like really intense melodrama and sadness. So clearly it's an obvious choice to film a video there. I don't know why, but I don't know. I think roller rinks are just like cinematic and emotional, and it was also just really fun. A part of me was like, it would be really fun to watch people that are really good at rollerblading dance and rollerblade to our sort of sad, sort of happy song.
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of your music videos is the dance choreography. And a lot of your videos feature very prominently some form of dance. I'm wondering, why is that important to you to incorporate that element within your visuals?
I never like set out to do it. I think it just kind of happened naturally. I think, yeah, I don't know. That was never an intentional thing. I think it just, for whatever reason, when I've gotten in front of the camera, it feels too awkward to be just standing still, or I don't know.
Do you come from like a dance background? No?
No, not at all. No. I would say I struggle with it a little bit. Like, I'm not a great dancer, but I've worked with some cool choreographers, and I've choreographed a couple of my own videos too, in like a funny way.
Did you do the choreography for Week?
No, that was a a really amazing choreographer, Holly Blakey, who lives in London.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for those of you guys who haven't seen it, Kelly's just on this empty stage in like a lecture theater, and you're in a chair, so it's mostly upper body. But it's so, I mean, that's the video. Like if you told me that, just if I read that on paper, I'd just be like, this sounds boring. But there's something so engaging about it, and
Cool.
you know, it's like I feel like for me personally, I'm not a dancer, but you know, the most I'll ever do is chair dance, so I can ultimately like relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it? Was it difficult to be kind of confined to?
No, I think I wanted that. I think I remember it started off as like it was going to be a bunch of sort of sculptural poses with slight movement, because I just felt like I wouldn't be able to do full on choreography with legs and hands and all of that. And I liked the idea of sort of being like slumped over in the chair and kind of defeated and kind of doing my best to like pull some movement together. It made sense for the song to me.
Kind of brings it back to like the Say My Name video too, because there was a lot of chair dancing in that as well.
True.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. The other thing that we like to talk about here are like playlists, mixtapes, mix CDs. Do you have like a playlist or a mix CD in mind that you made or somebody made you that has like kind of an interesting story?
I recently found a burned CD from freshman year of high school that I listened to it and I really enjoyed it, but it was so all over the place. Like it made me laugh. I just thought like, what a weird bunch of songs to put together on a CD. It was like 50 Cent, Erykah Badu, Queen, like just so many Jack Johnsons, like just like a bunch of random stuff. Bob Marley, like it's pretty embarrassing group of like just like a bunch of obvious things. But I also thought it was kind of sweet, and all the songs are good.
Was it a CD you made just for yourself?
I'd made it for myself and my friends on the way to like a dance. I think it was like to listen to in the car ride on the way to a dance.
Yeah.
It had Kelly Clarkson on it. That was like the year that that show came out. American Idol.
Right.
And everyone was watching it. And that song is on the CD. It's so weird.
Like the ballad?
Yeah, her first one with A Moment Like This.
Sure.
And like 50 Cent in the Club is on it. It's just like a really funny picture of time. R. Kelly is on it. Remix Ignition.
Right.
It's interesting. But yeah, I'm not that good at... I'm a little better than now at like curating a playlist, but I guess Spotify makes it so easy.
Yeah.
They really do.
They do. So that's almost time here, but I want to, before you go, bring it back to the roller skating rink. I feel like jukeboxes are kind of this like nostalgic thing that you don't see very often at bars. If you're at a bar and happens to have like a jukebox with an infinite amount of selections, what are like 4 or 5 songs that you would definitely play? And keep in mind that, you know, you don't want to be a completely like a Debbie Downer and there's other people in the bar too.
Okay. Jukebox. I would probably play I'd probably play an SWV song if I could. And then what else? What would I... Sometimes when I'm in those types of situations, I want to hear like Simon and Garfunkel because I just feel like that's like easy and nice enough to listen to. What else? What would I listen to in a jukebox? Not R. Kelly anymore, but that would have been a go-to in the past.
Yeah.
What else?
Would you throw on a wet song, or is that like too...
No, never. I would never do that. That would be horrifying. I don't hearing our music in public is always an amazing experience. It's like really weird at first, and then you're like, it sounds so much better out in the world, like for some reason, because it's got the approval of... It's been through an approval system that brought it to that public place. Yeah. But I would never put it on. Oh my God.
Is it just because of the optics on that? Like people are like, well, why is she playing her own song? Or
yeah. That and
I think that's fine.
That and I've listened to our songs so much just through the recording process and playing them for people before they're released that No, I would never. I'm trying to think of another like epic song that I would want to hear. I still love I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Yeah,
That's not like the most fun song, but I love that one. I might put that on.
Okay, great. So excited for the show tonight. Are you guys already working on the follow-up to?
We're working on music. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. We're writing and recording, and
So I
hopefully
imagine
we'll put music out soon.
Okay, so even possibly an album this year?
Maybe.
Okay,
It's possible. I mean, definitely no idea right now,
Sure,
but
yeah.
there's a lot of songs, and some are done and some we're still working on. So I'm trying not to think too much about when quite yet, but definitely working on it and excited to put new stuff out.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you.
You've been listening to Season 3, Episode 7 of This Broken Mixtape with the lead singer of the indie pop duo Wet, Kelly Zutrau. If you haven't already, visit thisbrokenmixtape.com to check out this episode's Spotify playlist. There you'll also find all of our past interviews and custom illustrations for each show. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to subscribe, rate, and share our podcast wherever you're tuning into us today. Also, if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for guests, feel free to drop us a line through our website, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find all our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and Spotify. As always, thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. Cheers.